regardless, a closet full of experiences, life experiences, good or bad, triggers or things. And just like you have triggers that trigger you into a negative state or trigger you into a defensive state, or want to put your walls up, or you feel like you're suffocating, okay, or you feel like you want to run, just in the same way, there are triggers for good. There are some triggers that trigger the soothing of your nervous system. Okay, so there are some expressions or some things, that someone could either say to you or, that evoke a certain feeling that will trigger a sense of either closeness, loyalty, love, commitment, respect, love, and calm and soothing, like a soothing of the nervous system. Like when you're younger and you go through a lot of like maybe relationship drama in relationships or ups and downs and crazy stuff or whatever, or maybe you're even, in your 40s and 50s or whatever, 60s or whatever, and you're still dealing with drama, ups and downs and everything, you haven't learned. You haven't learned from your experiences. There should be a learning curve that happens through these experiences. You can only do that if you have a sense of curiosity, if you have a sense of humility, and really likely if you're a prayerful person and you have a desire to also please God, because you don't want anybody in your circle to have anxiety over you, because if you are a worshiper of God, or if you try to be a disciple of God, Jesus Christ, or God, you know what I'm saying, if you're trying to be a Christian, you're going to seek to always create peace and love and harmony with your relationships, right? But in general, even if not, if you have a learning curve about yourself, right, you'll learn from some of your past experiences, okay? You'll grow, or you'll add more shirts or more pants to your closet, right? And you can learn from them. Like, you can learn from each one of those. And that really should be the goal, okay? So that you can break the cycle, right? Because the goal is to not, you don't want your partner to feel unloved, and, or you don't want your partner to feel disrespected, right? And sometimes some people by default, just by default of their natural personality or whatnot, by default, they just trigger you. Or you might find it difficult to communicate to somebody because your natural communication style is either overwhelming or triggering to the other person. And maybe as well, theirs might feel the same way to you. And what will happen is you will feel like you are always having to jump through hula hoops and do mental gymnastics whenever you communicate with that person, which will feel, in turn, after a while, will feel very hard, tiring, and miserable because of feeling confined and not being able to actually be yourself. Now, I'm not talking about like if you are learning how to just not talk disrespectful, or if you're just learning, or if you're, trying to be better at being more patient, or talk slower, or even talk quieter, because we all have different voices and different styles and stuff, right? So, but I'm not really talking about that per se, but just in general, your natural communication style may just naturally trigger somebody else, right? And you just might be going back and forth, and it may be a constant feeling, and you're not ever getting or feeling a sense of calm, soothing, soft place to land in each other. Not just for the man to have a soft place to come home to, but she wants that too. She wants to be able to have that feeling of comfort and security, protection, and that she can tell her man anything or whatever without being harped on and all that, right? And just like him, he wants to be able to come home and probably share his day or whatever and know that he's going to be understood. Okay. Anyway, sometimes though, just naturally by default, you can literally kind of not have a match, like, and I say this because I've experienced this in the past. I've experienced this before in the past where two people were just, it's like, again, like I said, you have to like put on your suit of armor and jump through hula hoops and do mental gymnastics. And, the conversation, what I'm trying to say is, for example, when let's say two people are upset. And I remember this is how my parents argued most of the time. This is how I saw my parents argued. Let's say if my mom was getting upset or my dad was getting upset, it would be like this. Babe, honey. So it was like they were holding in, and it just got quieter. It got real, like, because at that moment maybe they were having, and so it was like having to, woosah or whatever, and it was like somebody got triggered, but it was, instead of overreacting, it was, honey, and yeah, that's how pretty much, for the most part, that's how they argued. I mean, but it was like a restraining type of thing, it was like, let me hold back or whatever, right? But some people feel like they have to do that in daily conversation. Like in just daily conversation, they're feeling like accosted, or or they're feeling like they're having to say to themselves in their mind, don't overreact, or don't react, or don't respond, not right, like, okay, and they're doing mental gymnastics inside of their mind because they know they're having to exercise restraint. And let's say in a working relationship or a friendship or whatever, that's okay if it's somebody that you don't have to deal with all the time. But let's say if it's in a marriage, or a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that in that case, when it's just a constant state, like that's how you have to be constantly, like on a daily repetitive basis, it is make your hair fall out, stress out, break out, gain weight, lose weight, whatever, just stressful mental gymnastics, word salad, craziness, up and down, back and forth, or whatever, and it makes you just want to like pull your hair out if it's not falling out, and it will drive you up a wall and drive you bananas and batty, and eventually make you just not want to be with that person. Because a lot of times it's like, even when they do know that how they're talking or whatever is triggering you or whatever, or what they're doing, if it's their default way of speaking or talking or being, which means they'll do that on autopilot without even knowing, you will feel that constant like slap in your face or whatever feeling on a daily basis. And that could mean that you're just not with the right person. It's like, could you force the situation? Yes, you could. It's like you can try to work on it and force a situation, but the resentment from having to do mental gymnastics or having to change who you are, your personality, your style, your flair, or whatever, will cause you to feel a buildup of resentment after a while, especially if it is just your default. Like, you just naturally talk dramatic or with flair or fast or whatever, and it feels accosting to that person, and you can't be yourself. You have to put on your fake suit, talk like a mouse, and like everything is gonna be okay, and calm, and pretend that you're somebody that you're really not, you can only do that for so long before you want to bust out of your cage. Okay? So in working relationships, business relationships, and friendships, or types of things where you value that other person, they value you, but it's like my mom used to say, yeah, you can't take a whole gallon of that person, but you can take like a teacup. You can handle that person a teacup at a time. Some people you can handle a teaspoon at a time, right? And then other people, when they naturally soothe your soul and you are naturally drawn to them and they're naturally drawn to you, it's like you can take a whole gallon of that person. You want to be engulfed by that person. You want to be completely covered by that person, right? And that's what real chemistry feels like. Okay, real chemistry feels like that right there. Like, you can never get enough of that person. You can never talk to that person too much, and it kind of feels like you're just never tired of them. You're just never tired of that person, and you never really feel overwhelmed. You might have your moments or whatever, but in general, you don't. There's just a real ease to all of it, and there's not a whole lot of triggering that's going on by default. Okay? Anyway, I just find all of this information very, very interesting. I highly recommend these two books, the Love and Respect book, okay, and then the other one was The Crazy Cycle. I don't know why it's about communication. It's a second book, The Crazy Cycle. I think it's just called The Crazy Cycle is the name of the book. I mean, I read it. I have both of them. But yeah, I think that's what it's called, because it has a telephone on the cover of the book. But anyway, you can type it in on YouTube. I'm gonna try to plug in some videos, but I feel like this is good information in general to just know, like, when you're in a relationship and when you've triggered somebody, or when you can identify the beginning of the crazy cycle and you can on purpose stop it by either not responding disrespectful or not reacting unloving to your partner. The woman is always seeing the world through pink glasses and is always looking to see, do you love her? And I'm talking about, he brings this out in the book, and this is true. Even if you tell your wife or your significant other, your girlfriend, that you love her,